Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. More key European allies are restricting U.S. military access as the Trump administration presses ahead with its war against Iran, with both France and Spain now moving to block U.S.-linked aircraft from using their airspace or their bases. More bad news for former Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem as the Daily Mail has published photos of her husband in his secret life as a cross-dresser. We have that story for you, too. Construction on President Trump's $400 million White House Ballroom project has been halted by a federal judge until Congress gives its final stamp of approval. And a member of the South Carolina House of Representatives from the upstate was arrested and charged with a DUI. We have the details of that in today's show as well.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
We've all been watching this situation unfold in the Middle East over the last few weeks. And you may have noticed something that doesn't quite fit the usual script. Some of America's closest allies are saying no. And that should get all of our attention. So here's what's happening in the latest. As the United States ramps up pressure in the ongoing conflict with Iran, several key European allies, countries we've stood shoulder to shoulder with through NATO, through wars, through decades of cooperation, are beginning to dramatically pull back. We're talking about nations like France and Spain. According to reports, France has refused to allow U.S. aircraft carrying military supplies to Israel to fly over its airspace. Spain has gone even further, closing its airspace to U.S. planes tied to operations involving Iran and blocking access to certain joint bases. Now, pause right here. These aren't adversaries. These are our allies. We thought they were our friends. And when allies and friends start restricting access, especially military access, it's not just a policy disagreement. It's a signal that maybe they're really not our friends. So let's just talk about this in plain terms. U.S. military operations in the Middle East rely heavily on European bases and airspace. They're the staging ground, the logistical backbone for everything from troop movement to supply chains. So when those routes get complicated, everything gets complicated. It raises a fundamental question. Is this just a temporary disagreement, or are we looking at the early signs of a deeper divide? Because historically, when the U.S. calls, NATO responds. We give them a lot of money, remember? But this time, the response has been slower, more cautious, and in some cases, a bit of resistance. So let's talk about what's really driving this. Some analysts say this isn't just about military strategy. It's about politics and ideology. You've got leaders like Spain's prime minister pushing back hard against U.S. involvement. There's friction, not just over this conflict, but over broader issues, defense spending, trade, and frankly, worldview. Even within NATO, there's acknowledgement that tensions are rising. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte pointed out that part of the problem is timing. The U.S. moved quickly, and allies didn't have time to fully coordinate. But here's the bigger takeaway. When coordination breaks down, trust starts to wobble. And when trust wobbles, alliances get tested big time. Now, on the American side, President Trump hasn't exactly been quiet about this. He's been very direct, criticizing allies for what he sees as a lack of support. At one point, even suggesting that countries relying on oil routes like the Strait of Hormuz should step up and defend them themselves. In other words, you're on your own. That's a shift in tone. For decades, the U.S. has been the backbone of global security, especially when it comes to protecting critical trade routes. Now the message is starting to sound more like, we've carried the load, it's your turn. And whether you agree with it or not, it's a message that's landing loudly overseas. So let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because it's been in the news constantly over these past few weeks. It's a choke point in the world for oil and other trade. Disruptions there doesn't just affect one country, it ripples across the global economy. We've seen it, energy prices, supply chains, national security. So when tensions rise in that region, the stakes aren't just military, they're economic. And when allies hesitate to get involved, it raises another question. Are we still aligned on what the global threat actually is? Are we still allies? Now, you got to look at the big picture here. You've got European allies restricting access, disagreements over military strategy, political divisions growing louder, and a shifting tone from the United States. That's a trend. Some experts are calling it a transatlantic rift. In plain English, it means the U.S. and parts of Europe are starting to see the world differently. And that matters because for decades, that shared vision has been the foundation of Western stability. So let's keep this grounded. This is maybe not a breakup. Maybe the U.S. and Europe can still rely on one another militarily, economically, strategically. There's still joint operations, still cooperation, still shared interest, but it's strained. The whole relationship is strained. And they're dealing with a guy right now, Donald Trump, who's not going to baby them. The relationship, let's be honest, has been one-sided for years anyway. We've been a bigger contributor to NATO than any country in the world. We've been a bigger and a better friend to all of our European allies. But you got to think about this as a long-time partnership. When everything's going well, communication's easy, decisions are quick, everyone's on the same page, just like any other relationship, whether it's business, whether it's personal, family, whatever. But when disagreements start piling up, that communication gets strained. When one side feels like they're carrying more weight than the other, that's when things start to shift. Not overnight, but a gradual change. And that's where we probably are right now, if you want to be honest. So what happens next? A few possibilities. Allies regroup, find common ground, reaffirming NATO unity. Europe takes on a larger independent role in global security. I'm not so sure that I wouldn't be open to that. Again, I think Europe, it's kind of like a child going out on their own. They think it's easy when they live in mom and dad's house. When they're out on their own, they realize reality is a little bit tougher. So maybe we need for Europe and some of these European allies to go out on their own and try to fend for themselves. The other option is the divide continues to widen, and maybe alliances are reshaped. We'll see. And the truth is, we may see a combination of all of the above because the world's changing. The balance of power is shifting. And the old assumptions that everyone will automatically fall in line, those assumptions are being tested right now. And by the way, I don't think the United States right now is willing to just dump money to continue to throw money at countries who don't appreciate it. So I got a feeling that the old hey, let's call the United States, they're always good for $1 billion here and $1 billion there. I don't think that works anymore. At the end of the day, this isn't just about planes flying over France or bases in Spain. It's about our future partnerships, our future alliances. It's about whether the West still moves as one or starts moving in different directions. I don't think we will to a big degree, but I do think that relationships are changing. And it's about how the United States navigates a world where even friends don't always agree. but they can't have their hand out at the same time. They can't expect us to keep writing those big checks. And I don't think we're going to. I don't think Donald Trump wants to, and I know the American people don't want to. Doesn't mean that we're weaker, but it does mean that we have some new alliances and there's a new chapter. And that chapter is that we're just not the world's bank anymore. We got to take care of our own. We've got needs here in our own country. We've got veterans out on the street who need a home. We have hungry people who need food. We have children who need food. We need better affordable housing for all of those groups, for the poor. And we can't do that if we continue to send billions and billions of dollars to these foreign entities. We got to start taking care of ourselves. And we got to start paying our debt down. We can't just feel like that we are an endless supply of cash. We're like the family who overspends and they keep the balance on the credit card year after year after year, and it keeps growing, and they pay one off to start another one. We can't keep doing that. It's going to collapse, and none of us want that. None of us want to be in that situation. So it's time that maybe this is good timing. Maybe the good that will come out of Iran, in addition to making sure that they don't have nuclear capabilities, making sure that they're not a world threat now, and particularly not a threat to the United States, maybe it also will have us reevaluating our alliances with these other countries. And that's not a bad thing, is it? Love to get your thoughts. Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. GOP shots like Ozempic are everywhere right now, but here's the question. What happens when you stop? If you don't fix the reason your body gained weight in the first place, the weight comes back. Joey Hudson here at PhD Weight Loss. They don't just treat the weight as the problem. They treat it as a symptom of metabolic dysfunction, hormone imbalance, or inflammation. If you don't correct those, no shot or hack will ever last. PhD looks at you holistically to improve your health span, your energy, and your longevity, because losing weight is one thing, but keeping it off for life is another. Right now, when you call PhD Weight Loss and mention Joey Hudson, you'll receive 2 free weeks in the program, and they'll cover the cost of your food. That's real results with zero guesswork. Again, mention Joey Hudson when you call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900. Visit them online at myphdweightloss.com. Stop chasing weight. Start fixing what actually is causing it. Call today. Be sure and tell them Joey Hudson sent you. Get your 2 free weeks in the program, 864-644-1900. So what happens when a sitting president tries to build a $400 million ballroom at the White House and a federal judge says, not so fast, Mr. President? We're talking about a project that's already underway, already partially built, and according to President Trump, costing taxpayers nothing, zilch. But now, construction is shut down. And the reason goes straight to the heart of how power actually works in our nation's capital. Here's how things stand right now. A federal judge, Richard Leon, has ordered an immediate halt to construction on the massive new White House ballroom project. This isn't just a renovation. We're talking about a 90,000 square foot addition, replacing the historic East Wing with a price tag of around $400 million. And according to President Trump, it's being built ahead of schedule, it's under budget, and without costing you and me, taxpayers, a single dime. But the court says, that's not the issue here. Judge Leon made it very clear in his ruling the problem is authority. He says unless Congress explicitly approves this kind of major construction project, it can't move forward. In other words, this isn't about whether the ballroom is beautiful or efficient. It's about whether the president has the legal power to build it in the first place. Now, this all stems from a lawsuit filed by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. They argued the administration bypassed Congress entirely, and that the demolition of the East Wing, remember, it's already torn down, it's gone, and the new one is already being built, but it traditionally was the home to the First Lady's office, and that this action crossed a legal line. And here's what makes this even more interesting. Judge Leon had actually allowed construction to continue earlier this year on 2 different occasions, but he warned the administration, you may end up having to tear this down if the court ultimately rules against you. Now, wouldn't that be a kicker? You build it halfway back, and you have to tear it down because of red tape, because of the bureaucracy. Well, That warning is turning into reality now from the judge because construction has officially paused. President Trump, not surprisingly, is pushing back hard. In a post on Truth Social, he called the lawsuit ridiculous, pointing out that the ballroom is being built privately and efficiently. He also raised a broader point. Why, he asked, aren't groups like this suing over massive government projects that are billions over budget? He specifically pointed to California's high-speed rail and even Federal Reserve renovations. In his words, why target a project that's on time, that's on budget, and privately funded? Good question, isn't it? And there's another wrinkle here that hasn't gotten as much attention. President Trump's legal team argued in court that stopping construction could actually pose a national security concern. Now, why? Because the construction site sits above sensitive infrastructure, including what's believed to be part of a presidential emergency bunker system. So now what started as a construction dispute is touching on constitutional authority, historic preservation, and now even national security. Where does this go from here? First, expect an appeal. The Trump team is almost certain to challenge the ruling, and this could move quickly through the courts. Second, Congress now finds itself right in the middle of this because the judge essentially handed lawmakers the key. If Congress authorizes the project, construction can resume, and that sets up a political showdown. Do lawmakers step in and approve it, or do they let the courts and the lawsuit run its course? Meanwhile, the lawsuit over renovations at the Trump Kennedy Center is moving forward separately, so this may not be the last legal battle tied to these projects. At the end of the day, this isn't just about a ballroom. It's about something bigger. Who gets to make decisions about the White House itself? How much power does a president have to reshape it? And where does Congress draw the line? Judge Leon summed it up in a way that's actually pretty straightforward. He said this about each branch of government doing its job. And whether you agree with the project or not, that's a debate about now heading straight to Congress and possibly to higher courts. And we'll be watching it for you along the way. Now, shifting gears for you here. What a story from the Daily Mail yesterday. These are allegations involving Brian Noem, the husband of former DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. The report claims that hundreds of messages and images allegedly tied Mr. Noem or tied to Mr. Noem were exchanged within an online fetish community. The images, as described in the Daily Mail, published some of them, show a man that looks just like Brian Noem, wearing exaggerated costume-like features meant to mimic a big-bosomed woman. Now, let's just pause right there. Just a moment. What we have are allegations and reported materials. Haven't been independently verified yet. But here's where the story shifts from tabloid curiosity to something more serious. This isn't about personal behavior necessarily. The bigger issue being raised, especially by national security experts, is vulnerability. The Daily Mail reports includes commentary from a gentleman, Mark Palomares, who points out a key concern: compromise, and having someone that was in the position that she was in a compromising position. If you've ever followed intelligence or espionage history, you've heard this before. The idea is simple. If someone is in a position of influence or closely connected to someone in power, has private information that could be embarrassing or damaging, that information can be used as leverage. This is espionage 101. It's not hyperbole. Historically, intelligence agencies, including those of adversarial nations, have used personal vulnerabilities to pressure individuals into cooperation. Now, layer on top of this what's already been happening politically. Kristi Noem, recently removed from her role following a series of difficult congressional hearings. There were already questions swirling, policy disagreements, leadership concerns, even speculation about internal dynamics. Then this story drops. Her office has responded saying the family is devastated and asking for privacy and prayers. And you can understand why, because regardless of where the truth ultimately lands, this is deeply personal and very public. It appears that she was just blindsided by this, had no idea that her husband allegedly is a cross-dresser. So here's the question that we have to ask ourselves as Americans now. Where is the line between private life and public risk. We've seen this line being crossed many, many times. We live in a world where everyone, especially public figures, especially people like Kristi Noem, even though she's not Secretary of DHS anymore, she's still the director of this new organization, this new agency that the president created. Social media, digital footprints, online communities, nothing stays hidden forever. I don't care how carefully you think you're hiding it, and evidently this man did. He never thought his wife, who I think the irony here is, here's a lady who up until just a few weeks ago was one of the most powerful women in the world when it came to terrorism and spies and knowing what was going on in the world. And apparently her own husband was leading a secret life. Now, again, we have to believe in privacy. We have to let families handle these things because this is devastating to them. If, in fact, it is true, she hasn't denied it. So one has to assume there's some truth at some level here. If someone's private conduct has zero impact on their public role, should this matter? I would say probably not. But we know that's not always the case. If there's even a possibility that it could expose them or their spouse to coercion, to blackmail, or to foreign pressure, it becomes a different conversation. Now, again, at the end of the day, this is still a developing story. Still a lot of details. These are allegations. These are reports, but from a pretty reliable source. I mean, again, you can go to the Daily Mail and look at these photos yourself, and you can see that they look just like him. I mean, they had some photos of he and Kristi Noem side by side together. Then they had some of these photos of this man with this big bosom. It looks just like him. If it's not him, somebody has done a great job with AI. And look, that's always a possibility. But I kind of trust the Daily Mail not to get caught into some type of AI scam. If the Daily Mail published these photos, they have to be pretty sure that the photos were legit and not created by some 16-year-old using AI. What we don't have here yet is full confirmation. In today's media environment, we have to remember that. It's very important because stories like this can move fast. But the truth usually takes a little longer. And in this case, other media outlets are digging into, and I got a feeling that we're going to probably find more because if he had this online presence, if he had this online identity with today's technology, it's not going to take long for more people to come forward with some of those same photos. And evidently he had this ongoing correspondence with 2 or 3 other people in this chat room. Now, how he thought someone of his stature, that his wife, again, one of the most recognizable people in the world, how he thought he could keep this hidden, again, I never understand how people keep these types of secrets and don't think that they'll never get caught. Ron Reddy was the 6th and final candidate to announce his intentions to seek the GOP nomination for governor this year. He is a low-country multi-millionaire, according to reports. And he didn't waste any time kind of jumping into the campaign. He initially spent about $1 million, he claimed, to introduce himself to South Carolinians. He's already sort of gotten the attention of Fitz News. That didn't take very long. In a report written by Will Folks, the publisher, editor of Fitz News, he writes, with newly minted South Carolina gubernatorial hopeful Ron Reddy declining to participate in the first Republican candidates debate in Newberry. By the way, that is this Wednesday at 7 o'clock on Fox Carolina if you want to hear from some of the candidates. Not all of them are going to participate. We'll get to more of that in just a minute. Folks writes, Palmetto politicos were left to continue focusing on a minor, for now, scandal involving several leaders of Ron Reddy's campaign. According to a campaign statement posted to social media on Sunday, March 29th, Mr. Reddy was provided credible information that one of his 20-something campaign staffers visited a strip club. The statement continued, we immediately terminated the individual. We informed him that actions have consequences. Reddy himself was quoted in a statement announcing the termination of his regional director. He said, quote, "Our view is that individuals and entities must be held accountable for their actions, and it starts with our own team," he said. Now, this is kind of getting off to a rough start, that within your first week or so of officially being a candidate, you fire one of your staffers for going to a strip club. Fitz News goes on to write, the founder of the since scuttled Doge SC movement did not identify the staffer in question, but Fitz News was able to independently confirm Midland's regional director, Parker Gogan of Lugoff, South Carolina, was the employee who was fired. Gogan's hiring as Reddy's top staffer in Central South Carolina had been announced just 6 days previously, although the announcement has since been scrubbed from Reddy's social media. Fitz News asked the question, should Gogan have been fired to begin with? That's a question I'll be asking you as well. Text me, email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. State Representative Justin Bamberg had plenty to say about this subject, according to Fitz News, calling Reddy out for opposing individual liberty as well as failing to support South Carolina small businesses. While Reddy's decision to fire Gogan has been criticized, his decision to retain another one of his regional directors who also allegedly visited the strip club on the evening in question has sparked considerable discussion. And it does raise the question, doesn't it? And if I'm Mr. Gogan, I'm asking the question of myself. Why was I fired, but one of my colleagues was not, who was there with me? Now, Fitz News writes, as we noted in our report, Gogan was not the only Ready for Governor field director who allegedly attended the Greenville, South Carolina-based Trophy Club last week. According to multiple sources familiar with the situation, Upstate Regional Director Justin Lane of Clinton, South Carolina, joined him, as did at least one other individual affiliated with Reddy's campaign. He writes, it is not immediately clear why the campaign terminated one of these regional directors, but not the other. And it is a valid question, isn't it? If it's wrong for a staffer to be at a strip club, isn't it wrong for any staffer to be at a strip club? Or was this just a staffer that maybe Ron Reddy was having second thoughts on and wanted to fire anyway, and this was a good reason? Fitz News goes on to write, in addition to his work on Reddy's campaign, this is back to Lane, the other young man, he is an elected leader on Lawrence County Council, representing the citizens of District 7. He secured his seat in 2024, defeating former state representative David Tribble in a Republican runoff election. So this guy is not only a staffer for Ron Reddy, but he serves on Lawrence County Council. And he was at a strip club with one of his colleagues, or maybe more. We don't know. Fitz News writes, Lane's hiring as Upstate Regional Director was announced by Reddy's campaign last Sunday, March 22nd. Reddy's campaign has not responded to inquiries from Fitz News regarding Lane's status with the organization. Similarly, Lane has not responded to phone and text messages from our media outlet seeking comment. Will Folks writes, here's the key question we believe needs to be answered. If Reddy genuinely believes visiting a strip club is a fireable offense, a curious position for a self-styled defender of liberty to take, in parentheses, why was only one of his regional directors terminated? Why not both? If actions have consequences, and if individuals must be held accountable for their actions, why is Mr. Lane not also being shown the door? Fitz News writes. Ask the question. Ordinarily, after-hours indulgences by campaign staffers do not warrant media headlines, but Reddy's uneven, ham-fisted handling of this situation, including the ill-advised public statement confirming the initial termination, has succeeded in generating them. Fitz says, combined with his debate dodge and questionable cannibalizing of the Doge SC movement, is the latest indicator of an undisciplined operation, which has some questioning whether Reddy is ready for prime time. And look, the guy's a businessman, evidently a successful one, based on published reports, based on his challenging the state's status quo on his seawall, on his nice oceanfront property at the Isle of Palms. But maybe he's not ready for politics. Maybe politics is a little bit harder than he thought it was going to be. Not participating in the debate is an interesting decision. as a pretty much unknown entity in politics, one would think that he would jump at any opportunity to appear at any event. But that doesn't seem to be the case with Rom Reddy. There's a number of events that I personally am involved in the coming weeks and months that I know that he has been invited to attend. These are forums, and he has declined every single one of them. So maybe the strategy for Rom Reddy is, I'll just use my money. I'll buy all the ad time I can, which, hey, look, it's great for the radio, great for TV, great for all the media outlets. But I'll just buy all the time, and I can control the narrative. I'm not going to get down into the weeds with those pesky little forums and debates where people ask me questions. Could that be the case? Do you think that's the strategy of Rom Reddy? Of course, Reddy is one of 6 candidates. Filing has closed yesterday. So now we know it's official. Alan Wilson, Attorney General, 1st District Congresswoman Nancy Mace, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott, 5th District Congressman Ralph Norman, and State Senator Josh Kimbrell are all running in the GOP primary, along with Mr. Rom Reddy. So the question today, was Rom Reddy right in firing one of his staffers for going to a strip club and not firing the other? Is there something we're missing here? Text me, email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. A member of the South Carolina House was arrested and charged with driving under the influence in Oconee County, according to court records. Adam Duncan, he was arrested March 30th. Charged with first offense driving under the influence of the blood alcohol level of less than 0.10%, according to the records. He was released shortly after 8:50 a.m. March 31st on a personal recognizance bond, according to the detention center in Oconee County. Mr. Duncan declined to comment when reached by phone by the Post and Courier. He is due in court May the 7th. Duncan is a Republican. He narrowly defeated the powerful longtime incumbent Bill Sanders for last election cycle by just 62 votes. He's represented Oconee County since 2024. And speaking of the South Carolina General Assembly, the South Carolina Senate yesterday soundly rejected a House-backed effort to conform with provisions in President Donald Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. This has been an ongoing conversation within the legislature. Many of you probably are delaying your tax returns to see what the legislature finally does. The state Senate is arguing that it would have cost the state hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue that could jeopardize a massive property tax relief effort currently winding its way through the legislature. And that is a big part of the debate. Let me ask you a question. Would you rather have your income tax reduced, or would you rather have your property tax reduced? I don't think we're going to get both this year. So here's the story. This bill, which passed the House of Representatives by unanimous vote earlier in the session, would have conformed the state's tax code to include recent federal provisions eliminating taxes on income earned via tips and on overtime. It was also expensive. According to accountants for the state, the cost to the state would be approximately $289 million in one-time revenue at a time lawmakers were weighing upwards of $500 million in permanent tax cuts this session. a lot of those being property taxes. Senate lawmakers said early on in the session that it would be unlikely to conform with the federal level changes. They've been telling us that they probably weren't going to do that. They held that the high cost could potentially jeopardize the massive cuts that they want to see, while conflicting with the language under income tax cuts recently signed by Governor McMaster that basically separated the state from the federal tax code. Now, leading the effort in opposing this was Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey. He's a Republican from Edgefield County. He's a leading opponent of the so-called conformity. And he said during debate in the Senate yesterday that the bill represented nothing more than an election year stunt by congressional Republicans, something that the federal government is trying to push down on the states. Now, look, when the One Big Beautiful Bill was passed, we all applauded. We love the idea of no tax on tips. We love the idea of seniors having to pay less income tax. We love the idea of no tax on overtime. But he made a very good point. Senator Massey blamed the U.S. Congress for consistently failing to pass a balanced budget, which they haven't done in years. And he said that they're saddling the U.S. government with additional debts that South Carolina's government is legally not allowed to take on. Here's Senator Massey.
Last week at the Finance Committee meeting, the senator from Dorchester said, why in the world are we taking financial advice from people who've not been able to balance a budget in a generation? Not only are they not balancing a budget, they're not even trying. The federal government has the ability to borrow money, and they do it all the time. In fact, that's what Mr. Will was writing about here. The way they were able to do some of this stuff, the way they were able to fulfill some campaign promises, is they're just borrowing money. Money that, we're not even talking about grandchildren paying anymore, y'all. We're talking about money that great-grands and great-great-grandchildren are going to be paying. And what we do here, what this bill is that the House has sent us, is an election year game to fall into that same type of financial advice. It is terrible policy.
And I'll have to say, as much as I would like to see income taxes come down, as much as I would like to see no taxes on tips at the state level. Now, you'll still get that on federal. That's part of the One Big Beautiful Bill. He makes a little sense, doesn't he? Conforming with the tax code would also introduce a whole host of other exemptions. No taxes on car loan interest, taxes on overtime, and other deductions. Opponents argued that these could create other ripple effects across the state budget. Others, including Somerville Republican Sean Bennett, agreed with Senator Massey. Senator Bennett said, the question before us is about whether we adopt federal tax policy post-sale, knowing that it creates a structural hole in South Carolina's budget. He went on to say, with all due respect to members of Congress, we are not Congress. We're required to balance a budget every year, and we do that every year. And you heard that same theme throughout the debate in the state Senate yesterday, and they're all right. The U.S. House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, can say, oh, we're not going to charge you tax on tips because they can just go print some more money. The state of South Carolina cannot. The Senate killed the House bill by a 27-16 vote on the second reading yesterday. Now, I don't want you to think that I support the idea that we should not be taxing tips and overtime and all the things that are in the One Big Beautiful Bill. I 100% support that. But I also understand what the state is wrestling with here. I also understand that when Senator Massey says they can print money, they can borrow money, we can't. We have to balance our state budget. This proposal would conceivably come back this year, according to Massey. He told reporters after the debate, he said that members of the Senate could make a motion to reconsider the vote later in the week. House members could potentially revive the effort as a bargaining chip against a Senate-backed property tax cuts, because the Senate passed those property tax cuts, but they're over at the House now. And this is where you get the games being played. The House may say, okay, Mr. Senator, we're not going to pass your property tax cuts if you're not going to approve of our income tax cuts. So what do you want to do? It's a game of chicken. It's basically who blinks first. And as I said earlier, and I asked the question, which would you rather have, a cut in income tax or your property tax? I would bet you're probably paying more property tax than your income tax, because if the House does come back and try to take out the Senate's property tax cut, the homestead property tax exemption for homeowners 65 and older, it could cost about $400 million a year, and that's what the Senate is trying to push through. That's what I hope they're able to get agreement on. That's what I hope passes and the governor signs into law. But there's a lot going on in Columbia that affects your pocketbook and affects my pocketbook, and we have to pay attention.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.